Screen share. Hey, this is Warren Bird and Linda Stanley, and we are delighted to have you join us for a discussion about megachurch research trends. We're going to look at, in particular, recent shifts in America's largest Protestant churches. And it's Scott Thumma and Warren Bird compiled the research. Linda is your host along with me today, and we're going to look at a few slides and talk and then look some more. First one is kind of a maybe obvious to you that large churches are growing, but just to put it in context, 4 out of 5 churches in America, Protestant churches at that, are plateaued or declining. And not only are large churches growing, but they are growing at amazing speeds. Anyone who says, oh, large churches are a baby boomer phenomenon, they're dying, they're ending, none of that is true. Every year births more large churches than at any time, and the largest churches just continue to get larger, and they are the faster growing. Let me just give you one factoid. Last weekend, 1 out of 10 people who went to a Protestant church went to a megachurch. Megachurch arbitrarily defined as 2,000 or higher in attendance. And these churches are growing, and they fall off the map on most research because they are half of 1%. There are 1,650 churches of 2,000 and higher out of 300,000 churches, so they don't get included in any survey. So we did a survey just of them. Now we ask, okay, so of these 6 choices, how would you rank your worship services? And megachurches scored highest as being inspirational. And then we actually used a lot of parallel questions that other surveys, which means smaller churches, had asked. And interestingly, look at the 5th option there. They are filled with a sense of God's presence is their highest rated. Now what that means, I don't know, but the larger the church, the more inspirational and the less filled with the sense of God's presence, at least by comparison. Maybe good, maybe bad. One of the most interesting things to me was clarity of mission and purpose. We asked, and we gave them a scale like strongly disagree, disagree, agree, or strongly agree. So of those who strongly agree, the highest ranking, does your church have clarity of mission and purpose? Large churches, that's 2,000 and higher, 80%, 4 out of 5 strongly agreed, and the other 20% agreed that we have clarity of mission and purpose. And of all other size churches, it was half that amount. Now, in no way do these comparisons, are they intended in the least to put down churches that are smaller. I want you to know, as leaders of larger churches, how you're different and maybe why you're different. And if some of you on this call are in the 1,000 to 1999 range, we actually did break down the data just for you. That's available at leadnet.org/megachurch. Well, look at the other comparisons. Spiritually vital and alive, again, large churches are almost at least half again what other churches are, is quite different from other congregations in our community, and is willing to change to meet new challenges. Now, I'm going to come back to this last one later on, but for comparison purposes now, notice that, again, it's double what other churches say. That's that, hey, Bible's the same, Jesus is the same, gospel's the same, but the culture and the neighborhood are continually changing. And to be relevant to that, we need to as well. So one more comparison, and then let me pause and say any comments, pushback, questions. Large churches, we arbitrarily divided those that are 25 years old or younger. And it's the younger ones that are growing faster. It's the younger ones that have a greater percentage of young adults in it. Predictably, because the younger ones tend to be led by a young pastor, and most churches are the senior pastor's age minus about 5 years. And so as the senior pastor's been there a while and gets older each year, so does the congregation. Now, you can offset that by having a teaching team that's significantly, where your number 2 and number 3 are significantly younger, where the worship leadership, where others on stage are leader, but that's the general trend. Clearly, the older the church, the longer the pastor's been there on average. And both of these are just, way off the charts compared to like 7 years for the average pastor of all size churches. The older churches, megachurches, tend to be a little bigger. They tend to have greater member involvement, just slightly so. And they tend to have more giving. And again, it may be that everybody is tithing at equal rates, but a younger church with more people in their 30s, hey, their tithe amount is not nearly as much as an older church whose core group is in their 50s, different life stage. So let me pause there. Anything that I've said about anything that you want to ask or comment on from your context? I'm seeing no and no.
It's pretty clear. Thank you.
All right, let's keep going. So the number of multi-sites, first of all, there are now more multi-sites that triple the amount than there are megachurches. The megachurches kind of put multi-site on the map. Now churches of all sizes are doing it. It's just with a Tony Morgan deal, and he is saying, hey, at 1,000, you have good success on it. And we did a report on multi-site churches. If you want to download it, go to our homepage, leadnet.org. And in the search bar, just type the word scorecard, and you get this great report with lots of charts about how the state of multi-site today. But you see, it's just 9 out of the 10 largest churches in the United States are multi-site. And in fact, Joel Osteen used to be the largest. He's now been passed by Life Church. Joel Osteen Lakewood is the only one that's not multi-site, and I predict there are others that will pass as well, just because of the multiple locations. This slide is a little difficult to follow, but the gist is, that the bigger you are, you get bigger by getting smaller, meaning people don't find their identity in the huge crowd so much as in the small groups. So when we ask churches, how central are some form of small groups to your strategy of discipleship and spiritual formation? Like 82% said they are. So then we compared the churches that are heavy on small groups with the churches that said we are spiritually vital. And there was a very strong relationship. And that's what you see here. So then churches that emphasize small groups consistently rank themselves as higher in saying, yes, we strongly agree that our spiritual vitality is strong. And that should be no surprise, but there it is in hard data form. We also asked churches, okay, are you doing an online campus? And actually, when online campuses started, there was a surge of a lot of people tried it, and then they've kind of backed off. And now I think in recent years, I've seen more and more churches that are saying, well, let's do online far more than just broadcasting the service, but let's have intentionality. Let's have an online pastor. Let's have a team of volunteers that do prayer requests and giving. By the way, online giving is consistently higher percent. It is a sizable percent. I don't have a number for you, but that's anecdotal. I talk to pastors, and they inevitably volunteer the comment, man, we can't believe how much online giving comes from our online campus. So if you're not including that, do so. This particular chart is about, okay, churches that consider themselves innovative are one of their innovations online campus, and you see 2/3 of them are. So here's another interesting thing about the finances, and that is the more you emphasize beyond your walls, the higher the per person giving is. So, it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, well, if we're focusing on our needs and our children and all this, that's what's going to motivate people to give. No, there's something the Holy Spirit must be doing, where when it's giving to people that are beyond our walls, whether it's local missions or foreign missions, the per capita giving is higher. And if you can't read that fine print there, the highest column is where churches say global mission is our church's specialty. Now, what about the diversity factor? Well, the more campuses you have, the more likely you are to consider yourself multiracial. Now, interestingly, in terms of sizes of churches, whether they're monosite or multisite, the larger the church, the more multi-ethnic you are. Now, we know that from research. What we don't know is it still segregated within the church? You know, that the Filipino nurses are having their own small group and the Asian Americans are gathering for their own fellowship. You know, are people still separating off by tribe? We don't know, but we do know that that the larger the church, the more likely its makeup is to look like its neighborhood. And there are the stats to show you. I'll do one more and then I'll pause again. Finances. Now, the average, quote, tithe of people who say they go to church of any size is 3%. And so I'm joking with the word tithe. And that 3% average has actually gone down. In previous years and decades, it was higher. So the point evidenced by this survey is, and again, you see 2005, 2008, 2010, 2015, we've done the same question over and over, is to say, well, even though the dollars we're giving is increasing, the percent of income that represents is actually going down. So we think we're giving more because the budget is higher, but if you adjust for inflation, it's actually remained flat. All right, pause. Comments, questions, pushback?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if you two guys do have an online campus. And if you don't, why not?
I'll go, we do not at this point, which that was some of the notes that I was taking. For us being in a portable setting right now, it's kind of a lot to have an online campus and set that up every week, being in a YMCA gym for us. And I actually, I had thought maybe not even having an online campus, just because I've heard different pastors talk about some people won't even attend church or come to church because they could just get online, and it's actually kind of maybe even put them in competition with themselves, that people are less likely to come because of that. So when I hear Warren talk about pastors being surprised on online giving, obviously that sparked my curiosity a little bit to even maybe rethink that whole philosophy.
But it could be that this is a regular attender who's got a kid with a snotty nose and,
Sure.
Hey, we'll do our giving online instead of throwing it in the plate.
Absolutely. And it's something that for us right now hasn't necessarily been an option because of the portable setting and the amount of work. Not that it can't be done, because I know pastors who do it, but for us, I just know it's a little bit more of a jump being in a portable location, but definitely piqued my interest for sure.
Kyle, do you do any image magnification?
Yeah, we do. We put all our sermons online Monday morning. So there is a taped version, but just not an online as opposed to, what would you say there, real time, or I'm forgetting the word, but you know what I mean? Like they can't tune in Sunday morning and watch us. They have to wait till Monday morning.
Well, it may be worth experimenting with a team of volunteers who are techie to say, hey, would you run a service on, try Monday nights, try Thursday nights, try something where you are the yes, we'll tell our congregation in case they missed and want to catch up, but where you're going to do prayer requests and interaction, have a host and welcome and make it as personable as possible, and call it an experiment. And if after 3 months it just hasn't taken, hey, that was a great experiment. We learned a lot.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's great advice.
Yeah, for us, we do have an online campus. We've had it, I guess, for 3 or 4 years now, and it's worked great. Kyle, one of the best things that's been for us has just been a way to stay connected with people that miss church, whether it be vacation or like Warren said, with the snotty-nosed kid who stays at home. So for us, we went into it thinking the way it was sold to me is we were going to reach the world through this online campus. We haven't reached the world yet, but we've stayed connected to our people better. And yes, there's people that we reached that we've actually had baptisms of people that committed their life to Christ online, and they would drive in to the campus maybe a couple hours away or 3 hours away or what have you. And so that it has reached people, but our biggest benefit has been the connection, and then our giving has been great. I don't know if we can tie it necessarily to the online campus, but just online giving is huge for us. About 60% of our income comes in through online giving. So,
and that's pretty common, Ryan, that I hear for a number between 50 and 60%, depending on, it's a little lower if it's an older congregation. But the research is that churches that offer and emphasize online giving, the overall giving is far higher because people are more consistent. They give whether they're on vacation or whatever, and they don't miss. So that's a real boon to churches.
Let me just make a couple of comments, and I'm only half joking, okay? Speaking for the introverts of the world, of which I am one, some people just really don't like going to church. So is the issue with the online campus with pastors the fact that they want to see people sitting out physically in the chair in the meeting space, or is the issue that you really do want to reach people no matter where and in what method that you use? I have a lot of friends that I've never met face to face. There are online people that I email with and talk with and video chat with. And it could be with the next generations coming up, as well as some of the current generations. They just would rather do their thing online. I know that's very controversial when you think about community in church, but just think about it. And,
Linda, the selfish side of me makes me feel better when I see somebody sitting in a seat out there.
Yeah.
But you'll lead somebody to the Lord from Japan who stumbles across your church, especially if you use Google AdWords. I did an article for Leadership Network Advance. As soon as the AdWords opened up to churches, you get $10,000 a month of free Google AdWords. Linda, if you're doing any show notes or anything, a follow-up, maybe you can find the link to that article that kind of tells the story of a couple of churches doing it. But the bottom line is just have your tech person go to Google AdWords for nonprofits, and then you use that all to advertise within the few moments that your online campus is going to go live. And then anyone who's surfing at that moment for whatever keywords you put out there is drawn into your church experience. And so it becomes far more than just the people who know about and associated with your church.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Okay, let me keep moving. Here's something that's very significant, whatever the size of your church, that people are coming to, your most regular people are coming to church less often. I grew up in the era where I saw people with perfect attendance pins for being there all 52 weeks. Hey, I'm an elder in my church. I'm very involved, but I'm there like 3 Sundays out of 4 at most. And I love my church. I just life, family, travel, other things. And so the implication is you've got to think really hard. All right, I'm going to make this big presentation Sunday and assume that our core people got it, so I don't have to give it again. Nope. A good third of your core people weren't there that weekend. Now, it's even worse with children's ministry. I was just with Andy Stanley, and I went through this presentation with him and his senior team, and their children's had said, our kids ministry, it's 1 out of every 2 Sundays that they come because of, shared parenting with divorce and soccer leagues and everything else. How in the world do we consistently disciple or follow them through a incremental curriculum where they're missing every other week? Well, that's a challenge, and I'm affirming that's reality. You're not alone, and if you haven't noticed it in your church, it's probably happening to you too. Churches, large churches do better at reaching millennials, young adults, than any other size of church, but their ability to do so, or their track record of doing so, is slightly less in the last 5 years. We only asked this question twice, at 2010 and 2015. We don't have longer to go back. And interestingly, the bottom half of that slide is perhaps a no-brainer, but the more you emphasize young adult ministry, the more intentional you are about it, the more are going to show up in your church. So it is doable. This one is interesting, that large churches are engaging less frequently with other churches. During the last 12 months, has your church congregation been involved with any of the following ecumenical or interfaith activities? And that's clearly gone down in worship, education, fellowship, and community service. Don't know why, but that's reality. I don't know whether that's good or bad. That's reality. Now, here I'll say this slide and then I'll pause for further comments. You remember earlier we talked about, are you willing to make changes? Because that's really the hallmark of a growing church. If you tell me that you're trying to change, there's a high likelihood that you're growing, because what got you to where you are today is probably not going to be what gets you to where you need to go next. Again, same Jesus, same gospel, same Bible, but the methodologies have to change because our culture and our neighborhoods do change. And that willingness to be flexible is clearly going downhill. And I don't know why, but I think that's an area of concern, and I hope you are all the exception. Comments, questions about this or any of the previous slides?
Yeah, that one's interesting. I figured it would be in reverse. So, do you think we're solidifying our models and people are sticking with their models more? And so some of the younger churches that started, I guess, in the 90s and early 2000s are almost becoming more traditional in their like what do you think is the issue there?
I'll take a guess, and then I'd love to hear you and Linda guess as well. I think one fact, when a church finds a winning formula, it's like, oh, this is great. We're connecting people with Jesus. We're making disciples. This is great. You're very cautious about changing that formula.
Yeah.
And you surround yourself with people who are your cheerleaders. Oh, Pastor, I got saved under this ministry. This was great, and you really need to hear not just the skeptics, but the people who are just now coming on board. I did a study of megachurch participants where we had like 40,000 people take the survey. And when you have that, you can slice and dice, incredible. Okay, tell me about 20-year-old males who have been in the church 6 months or less or whatever. And what we basically found is there are different groups in the church, and this all became the book, The Other 80%, which you now don't need to read. But the gist is that most pastors listen to the group that's at the core right now, because they got engaged a while back. They're now very involved. They're your best friends and so forth. And they don't listen to the group that's just now making their way into the core. And so the core group, I'm going to make up something, Daily Vacation Bible School was really big 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And that's when this core group came in, and that's what they have a real loyalty to. Well, today, Daily VBS doesn't work anymore for your church. You're not even doing it. So you need to listen to the voices of the people who are just coming in to find out, how did you get connected? What's working for you? And that will cause you to make more changes. The other dynamic I think of is we are going from a 3-generational church to a 5-generational church. In that as people are living longer, it's not like you say, well, when the old people, go to the nursing home, then next generation can change the church. No, the older people are healthy and they're staying around and they're still running the church. And so it's harder the older a church gets to shift it, because you've still got that vested interest group that really likes the old whatever it was. Others, what do you think are reasons?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
I think that's spot on, and I think we could learn some great lessons from the African American church. They've been dealing with this issue for generations because they are very frequently multi-generational churches. So in my conversations with some of these pastors, that is their greatest challenge: how to keep the programming relevant, fresh, meet the needs of the younger people coming in, as well as those that have been there for a very long time. And I think we're going to see that happen more and more frequently with our churches. When I say our, I mean more predominantly Anglo churches as these congregations age.
Yeah. The one that really resonated to me with was what you said about the success. We've existed. We were a church plant 10 years ago, and a lot of the things that we saw success with, it's almost like those sometimes become a sacred cow, and we're like, oh, no, you can't touch that. You can't touch that.
Is that why you have a cow behind you?
That's the sacred cow, yeah. I like it. I'm going to start using that.
All right. Any thoughts from anybody else? Then I will go on. So now here's some troubling things. Fewer large churches strongly agree that they're spiritually vital and alive. They moved from strongly agree just to agree. That troubles me. I hope you're the exception, but there's the data. Yet, megachurch clarity of mission and purpose does remain high. So, in fact, it's its highest ever in terms of why we exist. And in fact, a few years ago, when I did a survey of senior pastors, and I said, "What's on your nightstand? What's been significant besides the Bible?" The top book was "Simple Church" by Tom Rayner and an executive pastor from Florida. And the reason is that, you got all this stuff that much of which works pretty well, but you have to, and all the clutter, though, can keep you from clarity and singleness of purpose. Now, I'm not picking on any older pastors, but here is the actual reality that while we praise long ministry, and clearly all kinds of studies have shown that long ministry does have the greatest spiritual fruit, at about the 20-year mark, the rating of the church's spiritual vitality begins to wane. And there are many ways you can address that, but maybe you're in a rhythm that needs to be revitalized for churches like that.
So the clock's ticking on you guys.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, put that on your calendar.
What do you contribute? Is that is the leader tired? Are they still doing things the same way? Give me some answers. I got 10 years to work on that one.
You know what the most important thing a pastor can do is develop the kind of culture where the pastor's succession, whenever it is, I mean, not just retirement, you may do a Francis Chan and say, hey, this was great, but now God's called me to something else, is where the culture is used to handing the baton and transitioning. And so that you're developing the culture that's used to a preaching team and not of the same generation. So as you guys cultivate number 2 teachers, are you cultivating someone a good 10 years younger than you, or at least significantly younger than you, so that you're and in your sermon feedback teaching, what ages are the people who are giving you feedback of what's working and what's not working? It's so easy to do the Brett Favre syndrome. He was just finally got in the Hall of Fame, but he retired and came back and retired and came back because everybody's saying, you got one more year, you can do it again. And to be able to step back and have more independent voices in your ministry saying, you know, do we have that vitality that we used to have? Or fresh, are we raising up new leaders, especially of younger generations? You do that, and I suspect your spiritual vitality will continue to grow. Because this next slide is sort of the same thing, that the older the pastor, the less open to worship innovations and to trying new challenges. Hey, we found the winning formula. Everyone seems to like it. Well, that's everyone you're reaching. What about the next generation that you're not reaching, or an economic group that you're not reaching? And it's easy to think, hey, we don't want to mess with what God seems to be blessing. And what God seems to be blessing, you don't want to mess with, but you don't want to ever have a narrowed harvest vision that says, you know, we'll just keep coasting the way we are. Finally, for this older pastor series, the more likely to be the pastor of the greatest growth. So when we ask, okay, when your church had its greatest growth, is it under the present senior pastor? 82% of churches said, yes, that's our pastor. Okay, well, what age is that pastor? And now you see the spread. And it's very predictable that the older you are, the more likely you are to have been there a while and been that pastor of growth. But that all raises the question, all right, who's going to lead the next cycle, and how can I begin to mentor and train that group who's doing so? So when we ask pastors or those filling out the survey, for where your senior pastor is right now, you know, how do you, and ought to be in terms of succession planning, where are you? So for you two guys who are with us right now, you know, do you have that emergency envelope? Do you have the plan of, you know, should, God forbid, your plane go down this week, who knows who's in charge, who takes the next step? Have you made a sealed envelope recommendation of who might be considered as your successor? Are you cultivating that person? I did a book on succession with William Vanderbloemen called Next, Pastoral Succession That Works. And we have a chapter called The 10 Commandments of Preparation. And that's for every age. So the older the megachurch pastor, the more prepared for transition. That's a good thing. Okay. So what else do you wonder about, or have you heard about that Linda or I could resource you about?
Hey, I'm curious. You didn't really have any information like on budgets, how megachurches spend money, like what percentage of megachurch, like growing church, is there any correlation to dollars spent on missions to the church growing, or even staffing percentages or things like that? Do you have any information on relating to budget and the churches?
I will be glad to tell you a few things. I will tell you where we've published something on it, and then I will tell you how you can get a current version. The overall perspective of large churches is that 44% of your budget goes to staffing cost, and that averages out to be about one paid staff member, not pastor, but, you know, from sexton or office administrator through pastor, one paid person full-time. And again, the trend is to have a bunch of part-timers, but if you add them up to equal the full-time equivalent, about one paid for every 80 people now who attend on a Sunday. Now, are these two benchmarks good or bad, right or wrong? I don't know. Because if your church, let's say, has a special needs ministry where you've got all your volunteer school teachers who have special needs training, and you have certain staff with that, well, that's going to be more staff intensive. So you're going to have a different staff ratio than the norm. Are you more programmatic? Then your budget is going to be in a different way. So those are two overall things. If you would like a summary, we did an extensive report in 2014 on salary and budget trends. Go to leadnet.org/salary and just scroll down and download the 2014 free report. While you're on that page, have your person who knows about your salaries right now participate in our current salary. It's technically the salary, staffing, and budget report, because those who participate get all kinds of special feedback about their size of church. So if you are 800, if you are 2,000, whatever it is, we will tell you about churches in your size category and how it compares. And this time, we're actually going to give you demographic multipliers so that you can tailor it. Okay, yes, but we're in an expensive area, we're in a more rural area or whatever, so that you can kind of adjust the norms for your particular community. So it's an investment to take. I mean, it doesn't cost any money, but it's a time investment to do the survey. But if you do it, we're going to really make it worthwhile for you. Did I come close to giving you feedback on what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you.
I think one of the misconceptions that a lot of pastors have on the global missions piece especially is that if they contribute more to that effort, then it will take away from their local or general budget. And that's just simply not true.
Right.
That's what we're seeing. Our friends over at Compassion International, that work closely with us, sometimes have a very hard time convincing senior pastors that engaging in compassion work will not take away from what they're already doing. And it's not just compassion, it's all types of global ministry, missions work as well. So that's something I think pastors need to pay attention to and do a little more research and reading about when it comes to budget issues.
The average very large church says that 14% of its budget goes beyond its walls. Now that may be to the local soup kitchen or to a missionary in Africa. But that's an interesting number, and that's part of our salary survey, and so we'll give you the latest version of it when we give you the report on the survey.
Yeah, Warren, do we have like a ballpark figure on what the total amount most churches spend, a percentage number on staff versus total general budget?
Yeah, the 46% of budget goes to staffing costs. That's salaries, benefits, everything related to staffing. So roughly half.
Yeah. Does that kind of feel normal for you guys?
Yeah, that's exactly what we finished the year with.
Yeah.
We're lower. We're at 35% right now. So coming out of the ARC model, it was Highlands around 35%, but we've seen we have to bump it up, and then we've kind of scaled back, but we bumped it up to 40% because we've seen the growth, and 35% hasn't been able to. We need to hire more people, and so we've bumped it back to 40. We've bumped up to 42% 2 years ago, and then we just worked back down to 35%. But we've seen with the growth, 35% is tough to keep up with that.
And
Yeah.
Kyle, is that 35% or 40% of your general budget or of all funds combined?
That's all funds combined.
Okay. And does that include outsourced stuff like, payroll or anything else you may not really hire a staff person for, but you're paying the equivalent?
It does not include payroll and outsourcing, those kinds of things. No, that's just simply staff that we pay that are full-time or part-time with us. Mm-hmm.
So we noticed that outsourcing is so much on the uptick, whether it's virtual assistants for the senior pastor or there are any number of categories. This time on the salary survey, after people give us their numbers, we say, and now please add in all your outsourced stuff. And I'm curious to see in the 2016 version how much that is and what difference that makes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Linda, why don't you comment on 3 things that Leadership Network is doing just in case Kyle and Ryan are not aware?
Well, our big deal that we're focusing some time on this spring, of course, is our next group of hub groups, which these are team experiences. I think there's a slide on the screen right now that tells you the different topics we're offering in the upcoming hub group that starts in April. And that means that all of these groups, all these topic groups, will be meeting in one time in one place. So that's going to be a really great time of networking and learning together. The other big thing that we're about to roll out is our 400 gathering event, which is a once-a-year event. It's like a conference type event that we're encouraging pastors to bring their team to. And this year, we're really excited to be able to say we're going to hold this at Church of the Highlands, where Chris Hodges is the senior pastor. So we're going to get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of how they do things at Church of the Highlands with their staff and their pastor, as well as just having some great time for you to bring a team and work on some of these ministry challenges together. And here's some other senior pastors talking about what's really working well for them in these different ministry areas. So we have designed this to be a really tightly packed 2 days of part content and part team interaction and planning together. So we're really hoping people will take advantage of this coming to Birmingham in September to be a part of this. It's a private invite. So you guys are invited, you and your teams, of course, but we don't invite everybody to this. We have a very small select group of people involved with us that are invited to be a part of this event. So put it on your calendars and try to make it. This is going to be great. Any questions about that? Nope.
Yep. Well, I would just say, what's the focus going to be on that, the 400, the gathering of the 400? I know build new friendships and kind of get exposed to Pastor Chris and kind of some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that they do at Highlands.
Right. Well, of course, leadership is the main focus. And, you know, Church of the Highlands is one of the fastest-growing churches in the country.
Yeah.
And we kind of want to know what their secret sauce is and to share that with the rest of us as well. But we know there are a lot of pastors out there that are doing equally great, innovative ministry. So we're inviting some of them now to speak about that and just let us know what's really working well for you guys and why is it working that way, and tell us how you do that.
My task as soon as we finish this call is I'm supposed to invite Andy Stanley to do that. Everyone, most times when we do gatherings like this, people always ask us who's coming, and of course until the first few start signing up, that's a hard question to answer. But
right.
Really, most people who walk away from these gatherings, it's the relationships. Hey, I got to hang out with Craig Rochelle or whoever, and I learned this thing, or I found someone who's like me, and you know we compared notes, and I got some great ideas. So we're strong on relational time at these gatherings.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
All right. Anything else? Then Ryan and Kyle, delight to meet you. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you for passing leadnet.org/salary for the salary survey onto your numbers person. It will come back to bless you. And our joy is just in serving you. And you are awesome leaders. And Linda, thank you for bringing this together.
Sure. If you guys have questions later on, just shoot me an email or Warren. Let us know what we can do to help.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.